The twin suns of Planet 09 were setting when a lone human traveler named Captain Reed crossed the dry red desert in his small hover rover. He was heading back to his ship after a long day of scanning for mineral deposits. When his radar suddenly beeped, there was a weak life signal nearby. At first he thought it was a glitch, but when he looked through the dust, he saw something half buried beneath the sand. A small blue hand trembling, reaching out for help. Reed jumped from his rover and ran toward it, his boots sinking into the soft ground. He started digging fast until the sand revealed the body of a young alien girl. Her skin cracked, her clothes torn, and her eyes barely open. She whispered in a weak voice, "My family left me to die." Before her head fell back unconscious, Reed's heart clenched. He had seen cruelty before during the human-alien wars, but abandoning a child was something different. He lifted her carefully in his arms and carried her to his ship, the Star Falcon, not knowing that this small act would soon make him the target of an entire alien empire. Inside the ship, the girl shivered violently. Her breath thin, Reed placed her on the medbed and started scanning her wounds. The AI voice said, "Severe dehydration, mild radiation burns, internal bruising." He connected an oxygen mask and injected her with nanofluid, hoping it wasn't too late. Hours passed before she opened her eyes again. When she saw a human standing beside her, she gasped in fear and tried to crawl away. "Easy there," Reed said softly, holding up his hands. "You're safe here." But the girl's tears began to fall. "Safe? No one is safe from them. Not even you." Her voice cracked as she told him her name, Lyra. She was the daughter of a noble family from the House of Sci'Lara, one of the richest clans in the Orion sector. They were supposed to protect her, but when she refused to take part in a mission that involved enslaving human refugees, her own father called her a traitor. She was dragged to the desert and left there to die so that her shame would never stain their family's name. Reed clenched his jaw, his eyes darkening. He remembered the reports. The Sci'Larans had destroyed entire human settlements for resources, and now they had thrown away their own blood just to hide their crimes. He couldn't understand such cold hearts. He gave her food, wrapped her in a blanket, and watched her eat slowly. When she whispered, "Why are you helping me?" "Humans hate my kind," he replied. "Maybe, but I'm not the kind of human who walks away from someone begging for help." Lyra looked at him quietly, unable to believe his words. That night, Reed stood by the window. Looking at the endless stars, he was only a trader now, but once he had been a soldier, one who had seen too many innocent lives lost because of powerful families like hers. He promised himself that he would protect her until she was safe, but deep inside a spark of anger had already ignited. The next morning, Reed's ship scanners detected movement. 3 alien drones were flying low, circling the area he had rescued Lyra from. He zoomed the camera and saw the insignia of her family's crest on their hulls. "They're looking for you," he said quietly. Lyra's face turned pale. "They won't stop. They'll destroy anyone who helps me." Reed gave a grim smile. "Then they'll learn what happens when you threaten a human." He activated his ship's cloaking mode and lifted off silently through the red sky. The drones scanned the empty desert, finding only the hole where she had been buried. The same spot where she had cried her last words to the wind, but now, the girl they had left to die was alive, and she was under human protection. As the ship entered orbit, Lyra watched the planet shrinking behind them, her eyes filled with both fear and relief. "Where will we go?" she asked. Reed didn't answer at first. His eyes locked on the glowing mark of the Sailoran system on his star map. Then he said in a low voice, "Home, to make them remember what they did." The ship's engines roared to life, cutting through the silence of space. Neither of them knew that this single rescue would soon start a storm of revenge, one that would shake the galaxy's noblest house to its knees. The hum of the Star Falcon filled the small cabin as the ship drifted through the quiet darkness of space. Lyra sat on the medical bed, her hands shaking slightly as she stared out at the stars. Her mind was full of fear. Fear of being hunted, fear of being alone, and fear of the human who had just saved her life. But Captain Reed didn't seem cruel. He spoke calmly, moved carefully, and treated her wounds with patience. When he brought her warm broth, she hesitated before taking the bowl. "Thank you," she whispered softly, her alien accent wrapping around the human word awkwardly. Reed gave a small nod. "You're welcome. You should rest. We'll reach safe orbit soon." But Lyra didn't rest. Her eyes stayed open, full of worry. Later, when Reed returned to check on her, she finally spoke. "Do you know who I am?" she asked quietly. "I know your name," Reed said. "Lyra Saelara. It was in the ship's database." Her lips trembled. "Then you know why you should have left me there." Reed crossed his arms. "You think I leave someone to die because of their family name?" Lyra's eyes filled with tears again. "You don't understand. My family doesn't forgive betrayal. To them, I'm worse than dead." She looked down, gripping the edge of the blanket. "My father is Lord Vian of the Saeloran Council. My mother is the High Advisor to the Emperor. I was born into power, luxury, and rules, too many rules, but everything changed when I met humans for the first time. Your people were weak, tired, and hungry after the wars. We called them laborers, not people, but I saw something different in them. They worked together, helped each other, even when they had nothing left." Her voice broke. "One night, my brother ordered human prisoners to be punished for stealing food. I stopped him. I told him they were starving. He struck me in front of everyone. And my father said I had brought shame to our blood. The next day, they took me to the desert, pretending it was a hunting trip. When I woke up, they were gone. No water, no supplies, just the burning sun and sand." Reed stayed silent for a long moment, his jaw tight. He had seen cruelty before. But this was beyond politics. She wasn't lying. He could hear the truth in her trembling voice. "So your family abandoned you because you defended humans," he said slowly. Lyra nodded, her voice small. "Yes, to them, showing kindness to your kind is weakness." Reed turned away, staring out the cockpit window. His mind burned with old memories, the camps, the chains, the screams of human children being taken by alien nobles. He thought he had buried that past, but now it was clawing back. He had promised himself he'd never fight again, but something inside him whispered, "Not this time." He walked back to her and said firmly, "You don't owe them your silence. Lyra, you did the right thing." She looked up at him, her glowing eyes uncertain. "Right doesn't matter when power decides wrong." The ship's AI interrupted with a beep. "Captain, incoming encrypted signal from the Saeloran system. Priority code, noble distress alert." Reed's expression darkened. "That's them," he muttered. He opened the transmission on a small hollow screen, and an alien figure appeared. It was Vian Saelara, Lyra's father, his silver eyes cold and voice sharp. "Attention all sectors," the broadcast said. "A human criminal has taken our daughter hostage. A reward of 1 million credits will be given for his capture, dead or alive." Lyra gasped. "They're lying." "They're saying you kidnapped me." Reed clenched his fists. "They're covering their tracks. If anyone finds out they abandoned you, their power will fall apart." He shut off the message and stood still for a moment. Then he looked back at her and said, "If they want a story, we'll give them one." Lyra blinked. "What do you mean?" Reed smiled grimly. "We'll make the galaxy see the truth, not their lies." He walked to the control panel and started typing rapidly. Files opened. Old reports, data from the Human Alliance, and logs from Saeloran trade routes. Each file showed evidence of human trafficking, forced labor, and secret deals signed by Lyra's father. "These people built their empire on slavery," Reed said. "And I used to deliver supplies for their ships. I have everything I need to expose them." Lyra stared at the screen. Shocked. "If you do this," she whispered, "they'll hunt you until the end of your life." Reed turned his head slightly, his voice calm but deadly. "I've already lived through one war. I can live through another." The girl's eyes softened, and for the first time since her rescue, she felt a strange warmth. Trust. No one had ever risked themselves for her before. She realized then that this human wasn't just helping her out of pity. He was fighting because he believed no one, human or alien, should be treated like garbage. As the ship drifted into the cold shadow of a nearby moon, Reed looked at the star map. The glowing circle of the Saeloran capital flickered red on the screen. He said quietly, "They think I'm just one man. They're wrong." And as Lyra watched him prepare for something she couldn't yet understand, she felt that maybe, just maybe, her family's power was about to meet something far stronger. Human rage mixed with justice. The Starfalcon floated in the quiet blackness of space, hidden behind the shadow of a frozen moon. Inside, Captain Reed worked non-stop at his control desk, screens glowing blue across his tired face. Lines of alien codes and encrypted messages flashed by as he cracked one layer of data after another. Each message exposed more lies, more corruption, and more proof that Lyra's family was guilty of slavery, betrayal, and murder. Lyra sat nearby, still weak but watching him in silence. She had never seen anyone work with such focus, not even her father's top agents. Reed wasn't like the humans she had been taught to fear. He was calm, strong, and when he looked at her, there was no hate in his eyes, only determination. Finally, Reed leaned back in his chair, his voice low but sharp. "Got it," Lyra blinked. "Got what?" He turned the screen toward her, showing a holographic document stamped with the royal seal of her family's trade empire. "This is the manifest of transport ships from Sail Aran Dock 9. See this line?" He pointed. "Cargo 300 units. But the cargo wasn't minerals or tech, it was humans." Lyra's breath caught. "No, it can't be." Reed's jaw tightened. "It is. I've seen this before. They've been selling human captives through the black market, disguised as cargo for decades." Her body trembled. "And my father signed it." She covered her mouth. Tears spilling down her cheeks, Reed stood beside her, resting a hand gently on her shoulder. "You didn't choose their sins, Lyra, but you can help end them." She looked up at him, eyes glistening. "How?" "They have armies. They have the council. They have everything." Reed's lips curved slightly. "No, they have fear. And fear burns fast when the truth is exposed." For a long moment, the ship was silent except for the hum of its engines. Then Lyra whispered, "They'll kill you if they find out what you're doing." Reed met her gaze and said firmly, "Then they'll have to catch me first." He turned to his console and pressed a small button. An old emergency beacon blinked to life. Within minutes, it sent a hidden signal across human resistance channels, the old war network. Reed hadn't used it in years, not since the treaty. But the code was still active far away on different worlds. Humans who once fought beside him saw the symbol appear on their screens. It read, "The Falcons fly again." Meanwhile, Lyra walked to the window looking at the stars. She thought of her childhood, the cold marble halls, the endless lessons about power, and her father's voice saying, "Mercy is for the weak." Now she understood what that had cost her. She turned to Reed and asked softly, "Why are you helping me truly?" He hesitated for a moment, then said, "Because someone helped me once. When I was a soldier, my team was ambushed by your people. We were outnumbered, trapped, and ready to die. But one alien girl, one of yours, helped us escape. She died doing it. I couldn't save her then, but I can make her sacrifice mean something now." Lyra's heart ached hearing that. For the first time, she saw how deeply humans could carry pain and loyalty. Reed wasn't fighting out of hate. He was fighting out of honor. Hours passed as they prepared the Falcon for travel. They had to cross enemy sectors to reach the Orion Relay, the only place where Reed could broadcast the truth safely to the Galactic Tribunal. But the path was dangerous, crawling with patrols loyal to Lyra's father. As the engines roared to life, Reed strapped in and said, "If we don't make it, I want you to promise me something." Lyra frowned. "What?" He looked at her, voice steady. "Promise me you'll survive. Promise you'll tell everyone what they did. To you, to your people, to mine." Her throat tightened. "You're talking like you don't plan to survive." Reed smiled faintly. "I don't plan. I act." Moments later, the Falcon jumped into hyperspace. Blue light filling the cabin. The stars stretched into long lines, and the ship vanished into the void, but on the radar, a faint red marker followed, a hunter ship. Cloaked, silent, and fast, Lyra didn't see it, but Reed's instincts told him they weren't alone. As they exited hyperspace near the Orion Belt, alarms blared. The hunter ship had locked on. Firing plasma torpedoes, Reed spun the controls, the Falcon dodging through glowing asteroids. Lyra gripped the seat, fear flashing in her eyes. "Hold tight," Reed shouted, the ship shaking violently. They dove behind a massive asteroid as torpedoes exploded nearby. Lighting up the space dust, he pressed a switch, activating decoy drones that shot out in all directions. The hunter ship followed the false signals, giving them a few seconds to breathe. Reed exhaled slowly, sweat on his forehead. "That was close," he muttered. Lyra stared at him in awe. "You've done this before?" He gave a small laugh. "Once or twice." Then, as silence returned, she whispered, "You risked your life for someone you barely know. Why?" Reed looked at her and said quietly, "Because I made a promise to myself and to the dead that no innocent will ever be left behind again." Lyra didn't answer, but deep inside her heart something shifted. For the first time in her life, she felt safe, not because of walls or guards, but because of a man who had nothing to gain and everything to lose. And as the Falcon sped toward the relay station, Reed glanced at the stars and murmured, "They left you to die, Lyra. But I'll make them remember that mistake." The ship's engines flared brighter. Slicing through the dark void, the human's promise had been made, and soon, the galaxy would hear the roar of his revenge. The darkness of space stretched endlessly ahead, broken only by the cold glow of drifting asteroids. The Star Falcon moved silently among them, its engines dimmed to hide its trail. Captain Reed sat in the cockpit, eyes sharp, hands resting on the controls as if waiting for something to strike. Beside him, Lyra leaned forward, watching the holographic radar flicker with faint static. "Are we safe now?" she asked, her voice low and uncertain. Reed didn't look at her. "Safe? No one's ever safe in this sector," he said quietly. "This place is the graveyard of ships that thought they were." Lyra looked outside at the spinning chunks of metal and rock. Some of them were old wrecks, alien and human alike, floating reminders of past battles. Her heart pounded faster. She could almost feel eyes watching them through the void. Reed adjusted the ship's shields, scanning for movement. For hours, nothing happened. The silence grew heavy. Lyra began to think maybe the danger had passed until the radar blinked red. "Contact," Reed said coldly. Three ships on approach." Before Lyra could respond, the first plasma bolt hit. The Star Falcon jolted violently, alarms screaming. Sparks flew from the control panel. Reed gritted his teeth and pulled the ship into a sharp roll. "Hold on!" Outside, 3 sleek alien interceptors swept through the asteroid belt like silver knives, their engines burning blue. Each one bore the glowing crest of the Saelaran family, Lyra's crest. Her stomach dropped. "That's my father's fleet," she whispered in horror. "He found us." Reed's jaw tightened. "He sent hunters, and they're not here to bring you home." The Falcon twisted between the asteroids, diving through narrow tunnels of stone. Plasma blasts followed, lighting up the rocks behind them like firestorms. Lyra held onto the seat, her heart hammering. "They're too fast." "Not faster than me," Reed said, flipping a switch. The Falcon's afterburners roared, sending it flying through a dense cluster of rocks. The enemy ships tried to follow, but one clipped an asteroid and exploded, scattering burning metal through the void. "That's one," Reed muttered, eyes locked on the radar. 2 more to go." The second ship came up on their left flank, firing a continuous beam of plasma. Reed spun the Falcon hard, and the beam sliced across the wing, tearing part of it away. The ship shuddered, warning lights flashing red. "Shields down to 40%. The AI voice announced. Lyra gripped the edge of her seat. "They'll destroy us." Reed didn't reply. Instead, he reached over the controls, opened a small compartment, and pulled out a round metal device. A miniature EMP mine. He handed it to her. "When I say now, press this button." Her eyes widened. "What will it do?" "Buy us 5 seconds," he said grimly. The enemy ship fired again, plasma bolts tearing through the debris field. Reed guided the Falcon into the shadow of a massive asteroid. The moment the alien ship followed them inside, he shouted, "Now!" Lyra pressed the button. The mine shot from the Falcon's underside, sticking to the enemy hull. A second later, a silent blue wave rippled through space. The alien ship's lights died instantly, engines flickering out before it drifted helplessly into a wall of rock. It exploded in silence, a flash of light swallowed by darkness. Lyra gasped. "You did it!" Reed shook his head. "No. One left." The last interceptor appeared from behind, firing a spread of homing missiles. Alarms blared again. The Falcon system screamed under the pressure. "Brace yourself," Reed shouted. He rolled the ship upside down, flying dangerously close to a cluster of spinning boulders. The missiles followed like hungry wolves. At the last second, he triggered the Falcon's decoy drones. Tiny spheres shot out, mimicking the ship's energy signature. The missiles split, some chasing the decoys, others smashing into rocks. The resulting explosions lit up the asteroid field in bright flashes. Through the chaos, Reed dived straight down, using the light to vanish into the shadows below. The last interceptor scanned wildly, unable to find them. Come on," Reed whispered. Then suddenly the radar beeped. The interceptor was right above them. Lyra froze. "They found us." Reed's fingers flew across the controls. "Not yet." He fired the Falcon's thrusters in reverse, sending the ship backward into the shadow of another rock. The alien pilot, confused by the sudden disappearance, circled lower, right into Reed's trap. "Goodbye," Reed said quietly. He released a burst from the Falcon's plasma cannons. The beam struck the enemy's rear engines, cutting them apart in one shot. The interceptor spun wildly, then burst into a ball of flame. The silence that followed was deafening. Only the soft hum of the Falcon's damaged engines remained. Lyra sat still, her eyes wide with disbelief. "You fought 3 warships." "Alone," she whispered. Reed gave a tired smile. "Humans don't like bad odds. We make them worse for the other side." She stared at him, feeling something strange stir in her chest. Respect and fear. But before either could speak, the AI voice broke the silence. "Captain Reed, incoming transmission priority channel." He frowned. "From where?" "Unknown source. Encryption matches human resistance code." Reed hesitated, then opened the message. A hologram flickered into view. A scarred human face appeared, smirking. "Reed, you mad dog," the voice said. "Word's spreading fast. The Sailorans put a price on your head, and every bounty hunter in the sector's looking for you." Lyra's eyes widened. "They'll never stop," she whispered. Reed stared at the hologram, then said quietly, "Then we hit them before they find us again." He turned off the transmission and looked out the window, the glowing remains of the enemy ships fading behind them. "Lyra," he said softly, "you said your family controls the Orion trade ring, right?" She nodded slowly. "Then that's where we're going next," he said. "If they want a war, they'll get one." As the Falcon's engines reignited, blue light spread across the ship's wings. The once quiet void now felt alive again, with purpose, with fury, with a promise that had yet to be fulfilled. And for the first time, Lyra wasn't afraid. She looked at the man beside her and whispered, "Maybe the galaxy was wrong about humans." Reed didn't answer. His eyes were fixed on the stars ahead, where vengeance waited like fire. The Star Falcon limped through space, its hull scarred and smoking after the brutal asteroid fight. Inside the cockpit, alarms blinked faintly, warning of engine strain. Captain Reed sat still, his eyes fixed on the glowing star map. He didn't flinch at the noise. He'd heard worse on the battlefield. Behind him, Lyra walked carefully, holding onto the railing as the ship trembled. "How much damage?" she asked softly. Reed answered without turning around. "Enough to keep us grounded if we don't find help soon." "Can't we go to a station?" she asked. He shook his head. "Every public port will have a bounty on us by now. Your father made sure of that." Silence fell between them. Lyra's heart felt heavy with guilt. Every time she looked at Reed's wounded ship, she saw the cost of saving her. But Reed wasn't angry. His focus was sharp, cold, and unwavering. "There's one place left," he said finally. "Somewhere they won't expect us." "Where?" Reed zoomed in on a hidden coordinate deep inside a nebula. "A place I helped build during the war. A secret refuge. Humans call it Haven's Shadow." Hours later, the Falcon entered the thick clouds of the Arden Nebula. Blue lightning flashed across the misty gas fields, and the sensors went blind. The ship drifted through the glowing fog like a ghost. Lyra watched in awe. "It's beautiful," she whispered. Reed smiled faintly. "And deadly. No scanners work here. That's why it survived all these years." The mist thinned, revealing a huge dark shape, an asteroid with lights carved into its surface. Metal platforms extended from its sides, and ships of different shapes floated nearby. Old freighters, patched fighters, mining rigs, all painted with the mark of the human resistance. When they landed, people came running to the docking bay. Some wore uniforms, others work clothes. Every face turned toward Reed. Then from the crowd, a tall woman with cybernetic eyes stepped forward. "Captain Reed," she said, her voice strong. "We thought you were dead." Reed grinned. "Not yet, Zara." Zara laughed and pulled him into a brief embrace. "You always show up with trouble." "Who's the girl?" Lyra stiffened, clutching her cloak. Reed answered simply, "Someone the galaxy left behind." The humans around them looked wary. Whispers spread quickly. An alien here among the resistance. Zara crossed her arms. "You brought a Sailoran to Haven? Do you want to get us killed?" Reed's eyes hardened. "She's not one of them anymore. She's the reason I'm here." He explained everything, the desert, the betrayal, the evidence, the ambush. The crowd listened in silence. When he finished, no one spoke for a moment. Then a grizzled old mechanic muttered, So she's the daughter of the monster who sold our people? Lyra lowered her eyes. Yes, and I want to stop him. Her voice trembled, but there was fire behind it. I'll testify before the tribunal. I'll tell the truth about my family and the humans they destroyed. But I can't do it alone. The crowd exchanged glances. Trusting an alien, especially one from that family, felt impossible. But Reed stepped forward, his voice clear. She's telling the truth. And if we want justice, this is our chance. We can bring them down from the inside. Zara sighed. You really think one girl's confession will topple the Cylorons? Reed smiled faintly. No. But her words, combined with proof broadcast across every system, that might just light a fire no one can put out. Later, inside the base's control room, Reed uploaded his data. Screens flickered to life, showing slave records, hidden routes, and secret deals between alien nobles and corrupt human traders. Zara watched, stunned. This is enough to bury them. Reed nodded. We'll send it to the Galactic Tribunal. Once it's public, no one can silence it. Lyra stepped closer. My father won't stay quiet. He'll send everything he has to stop this. Reed looked at her with calm eyes. Then we finish this fast. He turned to the communication officer. Prepare a quantum burst. Upload all evidence and her testimony. Transmit it through 3 relay channels to ensure it reaches the tribunal. The officer saluted. Transmission ready in 60 seconds. Lyra took a deep breath, stepping before the holocam. For a moment, she froze. The whole galaxy would see her face. The traitor daughter, the disgrace of Saylara. But when she saw Reed standing silently behind her, she felt courage return. She began to speak. My name is Lyra Saylara, daughter of Lord Vayan. I speak not as nobility, but as a witness to truth. My family built its empire on human suffering. They lied, enslaved, and killed. I was left to die because I refused to obey, but today I stand with those they tried to destroy. Her voice shook, but her words were steady. To every species who believes humans are weak, you are wrong. They are stronger than we ever understood, strong enough to forgive, strong enough to fight back. As her message ended, Reed nodded at the officer. Send it. A pulse of light shot from the base, carrying their message across the stars. It was done. Lyra exhaled shakily, turning toward Reed. It's over, she whispered. But before he could answer, the base alarms blared. Unknown ship detected, massive energy signature inbound. The AI shouted. Zara's face went pale. It's not a patrol. That's a dreadnought. Reed's stomach tightened. They traced us. Lyra's voice broke. My father. Through the viewports, a colossal ship emerged from the nebula, black and silver, bearing the royal insignia of House Saylara. Its cannons glowed as it locked onto the colony. Reed turned toward the control deck, his voice steady but fierce. Get everyone to defense positions. We're not running this time. He glanced at Lyra. They left you to die once. Let's show them what happens when a human fights back. Lyra wiped her tears and nodded. Together, then. Outside, the dreadnought's shadow swallowed the base, its engines rumbling like thunder. Inside, humans armed themselves, ready to defend the only home they had left. And at the heart of it all stood a soldier and a girl, 2 survivors bound by betrayal and the burning promise of revenge. The red alarms pulsed through the hidden colony, bathing every corridor in flashes of danger. The ground trembled beneath the heavy steps of humans running to battle stations, their voices echoing through metal tunnels. Above them, through the viewing dome, the monstrous Solaran dreadnought descended from the clouds of the nebula, a shadow stretching across the stars. Inside the command room, Captain Reed stood firm, his jaw set, eyes burning with calm fury. Around him, humans armed themselves with scavenged rifles, old plasma turrets, and ship-mounted cannons welded from scrap. Zara, he barked, get the power grid up and route all shields to the outer ring. We need 5 minutes of protection, no less. Zara nodded sharply. Copy that, Captain. But we can't hold that long against a dreadnought. Reed's reply was cold and certain. We won't have to. At the far end of the room, Lyra stood by the window, her glowing blue eyes reflecting the massive alien ship outside. Her father's insignia shimmered on its hull, proud, cruel, unshakable. She felt her heart twist. He's really here, she whispered. Reed didn't look at her. Good, let him come. The first blast struck moments later. A wave of plasma fire rained from the dreadnought's cannons, crashing into the colony's shields. The ground shuddered like thunder beneath their feet. Sparks burst from the ceiling, shields at 70%. Zara shouted. Reed gritted his teeth. All defensive turrets, fire! Across the surface of the asteroid base, dozens of human gunners took position. Old railguns, missile pods, and even handheld blasters fired upward, filling the void with streaks of light. The dreadnought's drones poured out like a swarm, sleek metal predators, hundreds strong. Reed ran to the main deck window, shouting into his comm, Falcon crew, take flight positions. Buy us time. His old ship, the Star Falcon, roared out of the hangar, piloted by Zara's team. It darted between the drones, shooting them down one by one in a storm of blue fire. Inside the base, Lyra turned to Reed, trembling. You can't fight them all. That ship carries 1,000 soldiers. Reed loaded a plasma rifle and checked its charge. Then we make them count our 1,000 one at a time. The colony shook again. One of the defense towers exploded, scattering metal and dust. Reed shouted, Evacuate Section 9. Seal Bulkhead 5. Humans rushed through the corridors, dragging injured comrades to safety. Lyra followed him, ignoring the fear in her chest. She had lived among her people's luxury all her life. But here, surrounded by humans who refused to give up, she saw something she had never seen before. Courage without pride. When they reached the main hangar, Reed began organizing defenses. Set up the plasma cannons here, he ordered. We'll hold the entry bay. If they breach this door, we fall back to the reactor core. One soldier laughed bitterly. And if they breach that? Reed smiled faintly. Then we make sure the reactor goes with them. Lyra's eyes widened. You'd destroy the whole colony? Reed's voice was calm. Better to die free than live under them again. A deep rumble echoed across the base as the dreadnought opened its landing ports. Dropships burst out, streaking toward the surface like falling comets. Contact incoming. Zara's voice screamed through the comm. Multiple landing crafts, east sector. Reed turned to Lyra. Get to the command core. You know their tactics. Help Zara predict their next move. She shook her head. No, I'm staying with you. He frowned. This isn't your fight. Her voice rose, fierce. It became my fight when they left me to die. For a moment, they stared at each other. Then Reed nodded. Fine, but stay close. The hangar doors blew open with a deafening boom. Alien soldiers poured in, tall, armored, glowing weapons in hand. Reed raised his rifle. For the fallen. The humans answered his cry with a roar, and chaos erupted. Bolts of plasma cut through the smoke. Reed fought with the precision of an old warrior, every shot finding its mark. Beside him, Lyra ducked behind crates, grabbing a fallen soldier's weapon. She fired awkwardly but hit one of her own kind. The sight shook her, but she didn't stop. Bodies fell. The air smelled of metal and burning fuel. Zara's voice came again through the comm, urgent. Reed! They're heading for the reactor. If they take it, we're finished. Reed cursed under his breath. Zara, lock the lower levels. I'm on my way. He turned to Lyra. Stay here. But she grabbed his arm. If you go, I go. He didn't argue this time. They ran together down the corridor, smoke and fire lighting their path. When they reached the reactor chamber, they saw it. A squad of alien commandos setting demolition charges on the reactor's core. Reed didn't hesitate. He dove forward, firing. The first two commandos fell instantly. Lyra covered him, pulling the trigger again and again until her rifle overheated. One alien lunged at her. Reed swung his weapon like a club, knocking the attacker down hard. Then, without warning, a booming voice filled the chamber. Enough. From the shadows, Lord Vane Salara stepped forward, his armor gleaming black and gold. His gaze fell on his daughter, cold and furious. You dare stand beside a human? You shame our name further with every breath. Lyra trembled, but Reed stepped in front of her. Your name was already stained long before she was born. Vane's eyes narrowed. And who are you to judge the Sailorans? Reed raised his rifle. The man you should have left buried. They clashed, Reed firing as Vane unleashed a wave of plasma energy from his gauntlet. The explosion threw both of them to the ground. Reed coughed, pulling himself up. Vane aimed his weapon again, but before he could fire, Lyra screamed, Father, stop! Vane hesitated just for a second, enough for Reed to grab a detonator from his belt. I told you, Reed said softly, pressing the trigger. We won't live under you again. A massive explosion tore through the chamber as Reed dragged Lyra toward the emergency tunnel. Fire filled the halls. Zara's voice echoed through the comm, desperate. Captain, The dreadnought's retreating. They're pulling back. Reed collapsed near the escape door, blood trickling down his arm. Then it worked, he whispered. Lyra knelt beside him, tears in her eyes. You saved them. He smiled faintly. No, we did. Outside, the dreadnought burned, limping away into the nebula. The colony still stood, scarred, smoking, but alive. Reed looked at the sky and muttered, Fire and blood, Lyra. That's what it took. She looked at him quietly. And what now? Reed's eyes hardened. Now, we finish what we started. The smoke still hung thick above Haven's shadow, curling around broken towers and glowing cracks in the ground. The battle was over, but the scars ran deep, metal twisted, air thin, and silence louder than any weapon's roar. Captain Reed stood at the edge of the landing platform. His armor scorched, his hands trembling from exhaustion. His rifle hung loosely by his side. Around him, survivors worked to repair what little remained, welding plates, carrying stretchers, and helping the wounded. Beside him stood Lyra, her blue skin smeared with ash and streaked with tears. The air shimmered faintly with the heat of destruction. She spoke quietly, almost afraid to break the silence. He's gone. My father's ship is gone. Reed didn't answer at first. He stared out at the stars where the sailor and dreadnought had once been, now just a trail of burning debris scattered through the nebula. Finally, he said, Evil doesn't vanish with one explosion. It leaves shadows behind. Lyra looked at him. Then what do we do now? Reed turned toward the command tower where Zara was coordinating the cleanup. Now we finish what we started. Truth doesn't burn. Hours later, Reed stood before the flickering screen in the colony's broadcast chamber. The connection to the Galactic Tribunal had been restored. A group of human and alien delegates appeared as holograms, their faces tense and waiting. Reed spoke firmly, his voice rough but unbroken. I'm Captain Elias Reed of the Terran Resistance. Attached are full records of the Saelaran trade empire, their slavery routes, their secret war funding, and the crimes they tried to bury. The galaxy deserves to know the truth. He stepped aside, letting Lyra move forward. The light reflected off her face, her expression calm yet filled with emotion. She began to speak.
I am Lyra Saelara, heir of the house that fell today.
My father believed humans were tools. He called compassion weakness, and I once believed him. But I saw a human risk his life to save me, when even my own blood left me to die. The chamber grew silent. Even the alien delegates leaned forward, listening. I stand before you not as a noble, she continued, her voice growing stronger, but as proof that humanity's strength is not in their weapons, but in their hearts. You cannot kill a people who refuse to give up, who fight not for power but for each other. Reed watched her with quiet pride. The fear that once trembled in her voice was gone. In its place stood conviction, a fire that even her father's cruelty couldn't extinguish. As she finished, the tribunal's judges nodded solemnly. Your evidence will be reviewed immediately. The Saelaran Dominion's privileges are suspended. Their leaders will be summoned for trial. The screen blinked off. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Zara turned to Reed with a tired smile. We did it. The whole galaxy will know. Reed exhaled, shoulders relaxing for the first time in days. We didn't win a war, he said softly. We stopped one from happening again. Later, on the colony's outer ridge, Reed sat alone beneath the stars, a metal flask in his hand. The night was quiet, just the hum of generators and the distant chatter of survivors rebuilding. Footsteps approached behind him. Lyra sat down beside him, wrapping her thin silver cloak tighter. For a while, neither said anything. Finally, she whispered, I didn't just lose my family today. I lost everything I was. Reed looked at her. No, you found who you're supposed to be. She smiled faintly, looking at the stars. When I first met you, I thought humans were just desperate survivors. Now I see why they fear you. Reed chuckled quietly. Fear? No, they fear the truth and that humans never stop fighting back. A shooting star streaked across the nebula sky. Lyra followed it with her eyes, then turned to him. What will you do now? He took a slow sip from his flask. Keep flying. There'll always be another Lyra out there. Someone left behind. Someone worth saving. Lyra's voice softened. And me? Reed looked at her, his expression unreadable. That depends on what you want. She hesitated. I want to help rebuild. For humans. For everyone. My people need to see a sailor and stand beside those they once enslaved. Reed nodded. Then you'll do more good than I ever could. He stood, offering his hand to help her up. She took it, her smaller blue fingers curling into his rough, scarred palm. At that moment, words weren't needed. The galaxy had changed, not because of armies or fleets, but because two people from two worlds refused to walk away. A few days later, the Star Falcon lifted off once again. Its hull was patched, its engines humming low. Lyra stood at the viewing window as the colony faded behind them. Humans waved below, their faces full of hope for the first time in years. Reed entered the cockpit and slid into the pilot's seat. You sure about this? He asked. She nodded. The tribunal needs witnesses. Someone has to tell the story. He smiled slightly. Then let's go make them listen. The Falcon's engines flared bright, breaking through the fog of the nebula. Outside, the stars unfolded like endless roads waiting to be traveled. As they entered hyperspace, Lyra turned to him one last time. Reed, she said softly, thank you for everything. He didn't look at her, just smiled faintly. You don't thank family, kid. You fight for them. The ship vanished into the blue streaks of light, leaving the ashes of war behind, but carrying a new story across the stars. The tale of a human who defied an empire, a girl who found her soul, and the day the galaxy learned what humanity truly meant.